For the longest time, Clerks was simply a duology, a fun milestone of the growth of Kevin Smith as both a technical filmmaker and a narrative architect. They're both interesting films in their own right. One an out-of-nowhere $27,000 black and white marvel of vulgar hilarity and surprising clarity, grainy visuals notwithstanding. And the other is the sensitive, mature work of a guy who's made his impact in the industry and is looking to show us his heart somewhere amidst the pop culture references and donkey shows. And for the longest time, that was it for the story of Dante and Randall, besides the occasional cameo and other Smith vehicles, or the short-lived but incredible cartoon adaptation. After Clerks 2, Smith left his Jersey universe behind, trying to find his voice in the wilderness that is Hollywood to decidedly mixed results, which I covered in my video, Kevin Smith's Flop Years. But in 2018, a heart attack nearly killed him, and his trajectory as a filmmaker changed forever. In the past 4 years, we've seen him return to the Viewisk universe twice. The first with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, a movie that, while a bit lazy, had a big, generous heart that almost made up for its shaggy, incoherent filmmaking. And now he's returned for one seemingly final trip to the quick stop, with Clerks 3, a deeply revealing and personal film that uses Smith's recent heart attack as a jumping-off point to explore the making and legacy of the original Clerks. It's a strangely radical sequel that upends the conventions of the original two films in search of its own distinct message, and it made me ask, and keep asking, a very specific question that has eaten away at my brain for the last 5 months. What was the point of the Clerks trilogy? What story were we trying to tell here, and whose story was it? Clerks started as a scrappy, one-to-one adaptation of Kevin's real life working in a convenience store, loosely stitched into a narrative. With the sequel, it grew into its own story, divorced from Kevin Smith's lived experience, showing the growth of a writer who learned to synthesize narrative and extract genuine emotional truth from his characters. And finally, with this most recent entry, he ends on a combination of the two, and attempts to drag the characters back into the world of his own lived experiences once again. Unfortunately, this search for authenticity backfires and costs Smith everything he spent 30 years building. The series is both evolved and devolved with its filmmaker. With its twin, often warring protagonists dueling for narrative supremacy, the Clerks trilogy adopts an inverse 3-act structure. Instead of the standard victory, defeat, victory model, we're presented with a quietly crushing rise and fall that mimics Smith's own. Of course, that only applies if Dante is actually the main character. If we're going by the first two films, Dante is the ostensible protagonist of the Clerks series. He carries the emotional weight. He's the first person we see in Clerks. We follow his journey. We are mostly shown the world through his perspective throughout most of the first film. Randall, on the other hand, acts as a foil. He spurs change in the life of a protagonist who can't change his own destiny. In Clerks 2, Dante drives the plot. While the sequel is more even-handed in distributing emotional beats to its characters, it's still Dante's movie. Everything Randall does in Clerks 2 revolves around how he's handling his imminent abandonment by his best friend. Dante's story fuels his until the end of the second act, where he yet again catalyzes change for them both to become masters of their own destinies. But in Clerks 3, the balance is different. We start on Dante, yes, but Randall is the focus here. He has the A-plot. Dante's story doesn't begin until nearly 37 minutes into the film, which gets explicitly lampshaded when Dante talks to Randall about the screenplay for Randall's movie.
I'm in this convenience store way more than you, but I don't come into your convenience store movie till page 37?
I had a lot of exposition to do.
Dante's emotional scenes are heavier, though. We're dealing with big emotions all around in this movie, but it's Dante that has to sob and shout and carry most of the external heartache of the film.
God, I'm so alone.
While Randall is the focus, Dante's journey is the heart of not just this film, but the series at large. What defines the life of Dante Hicks? In Randall's words,
"Yeah, you should or get off the pot."
Or in Dante's,
"I'm not the type of person who'll disrupt things just so I can it comfortably."
Basically, anxiety and indecision mixed with the enormous, paralyzing weight of societal expectations. Dante doesn't fit the traditional mold of a normal or successful life. He works a dead-end job with no prospects. He's a serial cheater even though he holds his romantic partners to more intense scrutiny. He takes authority and responsibility deathly seriously, even though he's never had any sort of power in his life. He's the superego. Not that I necessarily endorse or subscribe to Freudian interpretation, but it's useful here. He's trapped by the thought that maybe something somewhere else is better, but he doesn't have the tools or the ability to change that something or get to that somewhere. Randall is stuck in the same situation as Dante, but somehow he thrives in it. He's unbridled id. He acts on instinct, impulse, and desire. He's the embodiment of change, but not in any intentional way. He's chaos, propped up by his own inflated sense of self-worth. And they need each other. Together they almost form something resembling one functioning adult human. Dante can't manifest change in his life without Randall. Randall would basically be unemployable without Dante. As the catalyst of Clerks, Randall lets Veronica know that Dante is thinking of breaking things off with her in order to get back with his high school ex Caitlin Bree. He thinks he's doing this to save Dante the trouble of doing it himself, but without his intervention, Dante simply would not have gone through with it. Even though through a Rube Goldbergian series of tragedies, he winds up with no girlfriend at all, still stuck in the same inescapable limbo he's always been in. Dante's arc in Clerks is Campbellian, or at the very least Dan Harmonian in a more contemporary sense. He returns to his familiar situation, having changed. In Clerks 2, this limbo is taken to its next logical leap. But unlike Empire Strikes Back,
Fed, it ends on such a down note. I mean, that's what life is, a series of down endings.
this sequel isn't about down endings. Much the opposite, it's about finding meaning within the meaninglessness, and the grand battle of what's expected versus what's authentic. Does Dante choose the easy, conventional, and joyless life that's all mapped out for him, or does he live the more difficult life that brings him some sort of happiness? Dante's fear of upsetting what's expected of him almost causes him to miss out on true love and a chance to be a parent with Becky, played by Rosario Dawson, whose performance is so authentic and relatable it manages to elevate Brian O'Halloran by association. Becky is integral to Clerks 2 and the Clerks mythos overall. She's the ego. She's the final piece of the puzzle. She's the star that allows these rogue planets to finally find their orbit. She's the ultimate embrace of sincerity and rationality. She's cool-headed and she knows what she needs, and has the ability to get it. Like Dante, she too is trapped in the hellhole that is movies, but she sees the best in it, and can cut through her own illusions. Becky is capable of realizing change in her life, but is held down by circumstances, not fear. Randall again is the catalyst, for everyone. In his efforts to send his best friend off into the sunset with a ludicrously filthy but memorable going-away party, he accidentally unravels the precarious love triangle between Becky, Dante, and his fiancée. This total rug pull grants both Dante and Randall the clarity to see a sustainable path out of their endless, meaningless limbo, and forces Dante into an active choice in his life. The film ends with a celebration of hard-fought friendship, the tough but necessary road of self-discovery that comes from the acceptance of unconventional definitions of happiness, and the satisfaction that comes from a shared purpose, even if that purpose is something as mundane as buying and reopening a burnt-down convenience store. Clerks 2 champions the nobility of a life of intentioned mediocrity, and all of the joys that can be found within, while gracefully embodying a long-running axiom from the Tao Te Ching that Kevin likes to paraphrase from time to time. To be great is to go on. To go on is to be far. To be far is to return. Dante starts his journey at the Quick Stop. It's a mind-numbing hell filled with idiots, but he goes on. He persists. Then he leaves the Quick Stop and goes far, not that far, this is Dante Hicks we're talking about, to the movies, rejecting the Quick Stop as an aberration on his road to something greater. It's only by leaving his home that he realizes that life isn't defined by what you do, but by who you do it with. And by the end of Clerks 2, with his entire idea of societal expectations upended, he returns to Quick Stop with knowledge, maturity, and a renewed spirit of possibility, as enlightened as this Jersey boy is gonna get. It's yet another Campbellian monomyth wrapped inside of a Dan Harmon story circle. And then, in Clerks 3, all of that optimism and maturity gets shaken away like an Etch-a-Sketch. You see, Rosario Dawson is expensive, so you can't have her in the movie. Or maybe you can have her for one day, 2 scenes max. With this necessary thrift in mind, Smith commits the first of several truly unforgivable narrative sins in Clerks 3. He kills off Becky and her unborn daughter, victims of a drunk driver in 2006, the same year Clerks 2 takes place. So, if you're following along at home, this means that the complex, bittersweet ending of Clerks 2 gets annihilated mere days after the closing shot. Hell, it could have been the very same day, putting Dante and Randall back into essentially the same situation they were at the beginning of the first film. Clerks 3 finds Dante a tragic, hollow, broken mess of a man. Everything he cared about has turned to ash, and he is literally haunted by the ghost of the life he was supposed to have. He can't move on from it, even as his dead wife pleads with him to write a new chapter in his story. Now, on paper, that's one hell of a dilemma. One you could suitably unpack over a couple of grim but fascinating hours. But for some reason, this isn't Dante's movie. It's Randall's. His heart attack and subsequent filmmaking foray are the A-plot here, so Dante naturally recedes into the background. The doctor tells Dante to help Randall out of his post-heart attack depression, but who helps Dante? Who's been looking after this guy for the last 15 years? It's as if Dante's entire existence simply ceased between Clerks 2 and 3. Or worse, ceased between Clerks and this new sequel. Some faces may have changed, but his agency and his prospects are about as hopeless as they've ever been. So Dante helps produce Randall's movie and sacrifices even more of himself, giving away literally the only thing he has left: his stake in half of the quick stop to finance the film. And Randall, in true Randall fashion, piles on the megalomania and narcissism while forcing his supposed best friend to relive every awful thing that's ever happened to him, but this time recast as a side character in the heroic life story of Randall Graves. It all culminates, like it usually does in a Clerks film, in a blowout fight between the two, except this time, Dante has a heart attack of his own and keels over in the quick stop. He dies in the hospital watching Randall's movie, as Randall explains that to him, Dante was always the main character of their story. Dante views most of the film in a sort of metaphysical movie theater of the soul next to Becky, gets up, and walks out of the theater and into the afterlife with her. Thus ends the story of Dante Hicks. The man who could never make up his mind finally makes one meaningful, lasting choice: to die. He finally gets off the pot. With a concrete end to Dante's arc, what was the point of his life? What can we learn here? We saw the growth, maturation, and death of this character over a course of almost 30 years. But with the closing statement of Clerks 3, it seems that Dante's sole purpose in life was to be Randall's friend. He served only to improve Randall's life, to insulate him from consequences, and to finally allow him to fulfill a shabby artistic vision that, by the way, is never commented upon again after Dante dies, unless you count Kevin Smith's mid-credits podcast voiceover that explains an alternate ending he was thinking about shooting, which doesn't count. Clerks 3 isn't the sensitive, sentimental tale of complicated friendship Smith seems to think it is. It's about the triumph of narcissism over frustrated, long-suffering, beaten-down acquiescence. The story of one friend's seemingly endless ego and solipsism that could never be satisfied. A jerk of a friend who never apologizes and only lets you know how he truly feels when he thinks he's about to lose something. So what at long last was Dante's story? It was the story of a man trapped in limbo. A man trapped by indecision, a dead-end job, go-nowhere relationships, and grief. His reward for enduring this suffering? Release. Death. And that release from suffering may be the strongest narrative argument for killing Dante. As a choice, it only works by envisioning him as a man damned to purgatory who is finally redeemed, finally allowed his eternal reward. If Randall is Dante's personal Satan, tormenting him at every turn, an afterlife where he is reunited with the only woman who ever truly loved him is Dante's happy ending. But as the end to a 30-year story, it doesn't really amount to much. It feels hasty, underdeveloped. That's because with Clerks 3, we realized the story of Clerks was never Dante's, and it wasn't Randall's either. It was Kevin Smith's. As a meta-recontextualization of the Clerks series, Clerks 3 sacrifices any growth or storytelling value these characters made over the preceding 30 years and repurposes them as blunt, two-dimensional tools for a filmmaker looking to self-mythologize his own creative process. It's no secret Kevin sees himself in Randall. He originally wrote the part with the intent of playing him. He gets all of the best jokes, he's Mr. Cool and unflappable, he has agency and control in his life in a way the main character doesn't. But he didn't play Randall. The role went rightly to Jeff Anderson, a guy with a real grasp of that character and a weirdly enormous amount of artistic integrity. That ended up working out for the best though, because in between Clerks and Clerks 2, something magical happened. The characters came to life. They became their own people, divorced from the literal lived reality of Kevin Smith. The noble humanity of Dante and the wounded sadness of Randall revealed themselves as the characters found their place in Smith's larger View Askew universe. In Clerks 2, there's finally a gap in Randall's ever-cool, unflappable facade, and finally a real-world decision with stakes and consequences for Dante. These two young guys grew up and got grown-up problems. The emotional weight of the film resting at the imperfect intersection of their friendship and Dante's love life creates a strange balance that enriches both stories. By the end of Clerks 2, Dante has found love, Randall has expanded his affections to more than just Dante, finding a sort of found family in Elias and Becky, and they both find meaning and purpose in the resurrection of the Quick Stop. Throughout Clerks 2, more of Kevin Smith finds its way into Dante. His fear of fatherhood that turns to joy as it does in Jersey Girl, his search for meaning and messy love that defines Chasing Amy, a lot of his more sensitive and emotionally mature choices as a filmmaker and a human managed to deepen Dante from an archetype into a real person. But in Clerks 3, the author insert changes, and the soul rushes out of Dante as the puppeteer drops his marionette, leaving a limp shell that can only perform two emotions, anger and grief. Smith maps himself onto Randall instead, giving him his own heart attack, subsequent existential crisis, and desire to direct, throwing the whole emotional balance out of whack, and unintentionally reframing Dante as a man who's not in the room anymore. Kevin Smith's former producer and right-hand man Scott Mosier, who stopped making films with Smith after Zack and Miri.
At this moment, and that whole me of Randall is a tiny reflection of like moments, arguments that we had in the past. Mosier was such a humanist, as we all know, such a real person and stuff. And I'm a creature of artifice and entertainment at a certain point, and have been a spoiled child for most of my career because I was rewarded back in 1994 for taking my life, doing a fictionalized version of it, and people were like, here's a career, what's next?
And how, seemingly, does Smith see his now former partner? Inarguably important to get him started, but ultimately disposable. Randall can survive without Dante, even if it does leave him burdened with a lifetime of guilt. But Dante can't survive without Randall. Smith wanted to tell a story about how even good guys won't always be there, how the most reliable, dependable people in the world can be taken out of the game by circumstance and fate. A story about regretting the terrible things you say to the people you love, and about following your dreams while you're still around to do them. These are complex, interesting problems for a guy in his 50s to be writing about. They just don't translate cleanly onto Dante and Randall's lives in a way that makes their story feel as authentic as the real-life experiences Smith has clumsily adapted here. The shape of Clerks 3 feels unstable because it only follows the basic plot structure of a Clerks movie established by Clerks and Clerks 2, not the more important emotional structure. By casting Randall as the protagonist, Smith fundamentally disrupts the emotional architecture of the series. Randall has doubts, but he has purpose in this film. He's a motivated protagonist with drive. It doesn't matter whether or not Randall makes his movie, the fact that he's doing it in the first place is the actualization that matters. If Dante's story is going to make any kind of narrative sense across these three films, Randall needs to be the one who dies in the third act. The story should be about Dante's heart attack, and his realization of the pain of a life unlived that spurs Randall into making a movie set at the convenience store that will chronicle the life of a clerk. Randall is the catalyst for change in Dante's life. And in their big climactic fight at the end of the movie, Dante is the one who's finally getting in the good points. We're on his side, and then he maybe goes a bit too far, says something unforgivable, something that's been bubbling for 30 years. Randall, shaken by this, has a heart attack and dies on his way to the hospital, forcing Dante's hand by posthumously leaving him with a final choice. Finish Randall's movie, or let it and the Quick Stop die with him. After Randall's funeral, Dante watches an early cut with Elias, and they both realize the truth. That while Randall is the wisecracking cool guy in the film, it's really Dante who's the main character. He's been the main character this whole time. Seeing all of the moments of their friendship through Randall's eyes and a couple of choice recontextualized outtakes makes him realize how much they cared for each other. Somehow, it's made this amateurish, cheaply made movie more poignant than he ever imagined. Dante and Elias complete the edit and hold a big screening of the film in a movie theater, the way Randall would have wanted. It's an unexpected hit and gets into Sundance. It sells to A24 or Lionsgate or whatever, and we pretend that this kind of movie could still be successful in the cinematic marketplace of 2022. The Quick Stop is saved, Dante and Emma have a bit of a tense but mature reconciliation, and Randall is heralded as a gone-too-soon indie darling and outsider artist. His legacy will live on in the annals of film history, and Dante, with a newfound perspective on the positive effect he had on his friend's life, is finally able to move on with his own. Pull back on the convenience store aisles as people take selfies inside the quick stop and ask Dante questions about Randall. Maybe Randall and Becky are both behind the counter as ghosts if we want to indulge that. Harley Quinn does the oat milk maid thing to tie it all together, and credits. Oh wait, that's basically just Zack and Miri make a porno, isn't it? Son of a... Clerks started as a method of escape, a way to maybe get out of a dead-end service industry life. And it worked. Kevin Smith got out and made it to Hollywood, and he gained success. Clerks 2 was a rebound, made to prove that he was still capable of making the kind of movie people expected of him after Jersey Girl, his big swing for mainstream success, bombed. And it worked. He went far. But in Clerks 2, he also doubled down on the heart and sentimentality of Jersey Girl and managed to thread the needle more successfully, proving that his instincts were right and that he should stop comparing himself to other filmmakers and focus instead on being the best Kevin Smith he could possibly be. He looked inward to the things that mattered to him and reconciled those things with what made him successful. He returned.
I'm sitting in the editing room watching it, and I was like, oh my God, like, be like that. Like, that's what you want. Never mind trying to measure up.
To be great is to go on. To go on is to be far. To be far is to return. Clerks 3 sits outside of the Clerks series because that tale is done. We already returned. That loop is closed both narratively and artistically.
I think we're gonna do another Clerks, and I was like, no we're not, that's a terrible idea.
Because they're like, I mean, you got a Fabergé egg. You can't fucking duplicate a Fabergé egg. Like, and plus, what if in the process of trying to duplicate that Fabergé egg, you break the Fabergé egg?
Like Jeff Anderson feared, Smith has smashed the Fabergé egg by succumbing to a strangely sentimental and nihilistic nostalgia that's both narratively unsatisfying and dispiriting enough to tarnish the experience of his earlier work. In interviews and Q&As, Smith says he killed Dante as a gift to his younger self. The self that made Clerks all those years ago, and sacrificed his original dark ending for a chance at a career. The 22-year-old's edgiest joke, a guy who wasn't even supposed to be there today is killed by a robber. A meaningless existence ended by happenstance and bad luck. Now, 30 years later, he's returned to that pivotal choice to try to put his entire career and legacy into perspective. And by doing so, he perhaps misunderstands that Tao Te Ching verse. To be far is to return, sure, but you don't return the same. Or at the very least, if you've done it right, you shouldn't. That young artist doesn't need the gift, because he's gone. And he's also you. There's nothing meaningful to be gained by making the 50-year-old avatars of himself attempt to recreate the same experience the 22-year-old version of himself already had. Because the choice he made all those years ago was the correct one. The decision to choose bittersweet empathy, to choose the happy ending for his characters, is what started this journey. It's what allowed him to go on, to be far, and inevitably to return. To turn to the Tao Te Ching one last time, let your heart be at peace. Amidst the rush of worldly comings and goings, observe how endings become beginnings. Things flourish each by each, only to return to the source, to what is and what is to be. To return to the root is to find peace. To find peace is to fulfill one's destiny. To fulfill one's destiny is to be constant. To know the constant is called insight. Not knowing this cycle leads to eternal disaster. Thank you all for watching Too Many Tapes. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get updates for when I upload videos. I swear, this is the last Kevin Smith video I do, I promise. It has to be it. Unless you want more. I'm pretty much at your mercy here, let me know in the comments. If you want to help out a small YouTube channel, consider donating $1 or more a month to my Patreon. Your generous donations helped me fix my editing computer when an out-of-nowhere storm came through and totally fried my power supply, so thank you for that. If you donate $50 or more a month like Cammy, you get a movie recommendation. This month I'm recommending a nearly 20-year spanning trilogy that manages to throw a wild final movie curveball that actually, sticks the landing. It's Richard Linklater's Before trilogy, which are a series of mostly improvised romance films starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, that stars an achingly earnest film where two travelers meet on a train and fall in love, and the sequels, each 9 years apart, expand and complicate that world in ways that are realistic, heartbreaking, life-affirming, and deeply, deeply human. If you donate $20 or more, you're NATO Kitsch, you get to have your name big in the credits, and you don't get a silly comparison this month, it's all sincerity. You're like my best friend, and I'm lucky I know you. For $10 or more a month, you're in the Elias Club because you're wildly underrated, and you get to have your name in the credits pretty big too. And for $5 a month, you're part of the Christian Crypto Club. God, that felt awful to say. In penance, you get early access to my videos. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you next time on Too Many Tapes.
We're almost there.
Why are we walking like this?